exists a particular instant in a woman's journey when everything underneath begins transforming long before her conscious mind recognizes what's unfolding. It resembles less an accidental discovery and more an invisible magnetism, pulling her toward wisdom she didn't realize she was seeking. Women arriving at this threshold frequently speak of an unexplainable attraction, an internal knowing, as if existence itself conspires to position this revelation directly in her path. This transcends mere chance or random occurrence. Within Jung's psychological framework, this enigmatic coordination bears the name synchronicity, a significant arrangement fashioned by unconscious forces, weaving internal transformation with external circumstances in patterns logic struggles to decode. Your presence here, absorbing these words right now, signals that transformation has already commenced within your depths. The unconscious never transmits messages arbitrarily. It communicates when a woman stands at an invisible border, preparing to enter a life chapter demanding unprecedented authenticity, profound introspection, and complete alignment with her essence. Jung recognized this transitional period as a liminal threshold, a psychological gateway where an obsolete identity begins crumbling so authentic truth can surface. Externally, nothing appears dramatic, yet internally your entire foundation trembles. This transformation frequently manifests somatically before cognitive awareness catches up. Perhaps you experience resistance when attempting behaviors that previously felt natural. Maybe you carry unexplained exhaustion that rest cannot cure, or uncomfortable friction with the identity you've maintained. This represents the initial fracturing of your persona, the protective social facade now constricting, suffocating, betraying your truth. For countless women, this mask provided years of functional service, enabling navigation through societal expectations and relational demands. Eventually, however, the genuine self begins pressing against these constraints, insisting on expansion, oxygen, authentic expression. Why this moment? Why not decades earlier? Because psychological development follows organic timing, refusing submission to chronological age or cultural pressure. Jung described the self, that inner organizing nucleus representing complete potential, as awakening exclusively when internal readiness arrives. Certain women feel this stirring during their 30s, others throughout their 50s. Timing reflects no inadequacy or postponement. It simply reveals when unconscious truth accumulates sufficient mass for the outdated identity to fracture open. You might observe diminishing engagement with discussions or communities once deemed essential. Energy expenditure maintaining particular connections suddenly feels inexplicably depleting. Withdrawal intensifies, stemming not from melancholy but necessity. What observers misinterpret as temperamental shifts or detachment actually constitutes instinctive retreat into sacred inner territory, the psychological chamber where profound metamorphosis transpires. This internal withdrawal signifies no defect. It marks initiation. Jung recognized that substantial psychological evolution demands isolation. External stimulation must quiet so unconscious restructuring can proceed. For women approaching their most potent phase, solitude transcends helpfulness, becoming absolutely vital. Here clarity crystallizes, suppressed feelings emerge surfaceward, and authentic identity assembles itself fragment by fragment. Should you sense you've carried difference, perpetually yet managed concealment, this becomes the juncture where hiding grows more agonizing than revelation. Pretense costs escalate beyond tolerance. Subtle shifts become noticeable, heightened sensitivity toward deception, accelerated reactions against emotional coercion, complete intolerance for hollow exchanges. What you previously endured now feels asphyxiating. This isn't pessimism, it's advancement. Certain women characterize this as feeling selected for something never consciously chosen. A sensation of guidance pervades, of being observed, of preparation for chapters not yet visible. This represents neither delusion nor arrogance. It's individuation's initial awakening, Jung's process of achieving wholeness. When individuation activates, the unconscious releases symbolic communications, dreams, revelations, intuitive impulses, emotional movements, pulling a woman inward toward her authentic architecture. This inward gravitation can feel isolating. It generates questions about your sanity. Yet nothing malfunctions. What registers as disturbance is obsolete identity collapsing. Like any disintegrating structure, it generates noise, tremors, disturbance. It destabilizes temporary peace before constructing superior foundations. The liminal territory you're entering contains no emptiness. It's transitional space where the former self cannot fit, yet the emerging self hasn't completely arrived. Many women misdiagnose this phase as emotional fragility or exhaustion. Truthfully, it constitutes psychological renovation. Everything outdated undergoes removal, so everything genuine can emerge. Should you feel increasingly sensitive lately, more intuitive, more cognizant of invisible energies, more responsive to personal discomfort, this signals no fragility. It's the psyche refining your perceptual capacity. Jung believed intuition amplifies when a woman advances toward deeper identity. You begin sensing subsurface realities, interpreting emotional undercurrents, recognizing truths before verbal articulation. You're not fabricating impressions. You're evolving. As awakening intensifies, a woman begins perceiving existence through transformed lenses. Conversations once enjoyable now ring hollow, as though you articulate words no longer belonging to your voice. Surrounding people cannot comprehend what's transpiring because nothing visible has shifted. Yet internally, everything feels altered. Your soul has stepped forward while your former self attempts catching up. Jung characterized this as tension between the ascending self and dissolving persona. When authentic identity begins rising, false roles perpetuated through habit or expectation begin dissolving. This dissolution disorients. Activities previously motivating you cease generating satisfaction. Accomplishments once significant now appear meaningless. Emotional distance develops from previously familiar environments. This isn't apathy, it's discernment. Your psyche extracts you from anything diluting your essence. It's instinctive pruning, eliminating whatever no longer nourishes growth. With this pruning arrives unexpected sensitivity. You detect dishonesty before speech commences. You perceive concealed intentions per meeting rooms before anyone reveals them. You sense emotional dynamics beneath behaviors with disturbing precision. This transcends paranoia or excessive analysis. It's the intuitive function developing, among Jung's essential psychological capacities that sharpen as women approach individuation. Perception broadens, extending beyond superficial reality into deeper configurations others miss. Yet heightened perception demands sacrifice. Conventional social engagement becomes draining. You cannot continue pretending invisibility to unspoken animosities or meticulously disguised insecurities. Emotional performances people maintain become transparent. Navigating superficial interactions feels increasingly burdensome. This explains why women entering genuine power increasingly seek solitude, not from disliking humanity, but because their internal universe expands faster than external comprehension allows. Jung's archetypal work illuminates what's transpiring. Transition from what he associated with maiden psychology toward sovereign feminine archetype involves profound psychic energy redistribution. The maiden seeks outward validation. She molds herself according to external expectations, pursuing love, validation, acceptance. She performs versions that maintain harmony. The woman stepping into sovereignty turns inward. She abandons seeking permission for existence. Worth originates from self-recognition rather than external mirrors. This transcends chronological age. It concerns inner maturation. Certain women spend entire lifetimes in maiden stage psychology, defined by others' perceptions. Others make the descent earlier, often through heartbreak, loss, betrayal, or sudden internal revelation. If recognition strikes while listening, transition already progresses. You're migrating from externally constructed identity toward internally anchored truth. This transition resembles falling. You lose control over ancient patterns. You witness self-fragments crumbling. You feel stripped of certainty. Yet falling isn't failure. In Jungian psychology, descent symbolizes necessary return to the unconscious, a journey into concealed psychic layers where ancient wounds, forgotten memories, rejected self aspects await integration. This explains process intensity. You're not merely changing, you're reclaiming pieces abandoned long ago. Journeying inward, something remarkable occurs. You sense the presence of ancestral women, not literal apparitions, but psychological imprints stored within collective unconscious. Jung believed every woman carries lineage, emotional experiences, inherited wounds, and inherited wisdom both. When confronting patterns like self-sacrifice, silence, people-pleasing, or suppressed rage, you're not solely facing personal history. You're facing generational conditioning. This explains why your transformation feels larger than individual existence. You're unwinding patterns potentially originating decades or centuries prior. When choosing authenticity over accommodation, speaking truths your ancestors couldn't voice, refusing to perpetuate cycles that harmed preceding women, you participate in transgenerational healing. You liberate not only yourself, but the lineage connected through blood and archetype. Yet liberation requires shadow confrontation. The aspects you've rejected because they threatened acceptability. Jung described shadow as the unconscious repository of everything we deny about ourselves. For many women, this includes anger, desire, ambition, assertiveness, boundaries, self-prioritization, qualities that, if expressed, might challenge societal frameworks. These aren't flaws, they're suppressed capabilities. When a woman begins integrating them, she doesn't become harsh or imbalanced, she becomes complete. Wholeness, however, disturbs those benefiting from your fragmentation. People accustomed to your compliance may interpret growth as defiance. They might label you selfish, theatrical, or problematic. They may attempt pulling you back toward familiar versions because your evolution challenges roles they expect you fulfilling. This resistance constitutes testing. The question becomes, will you return to former self for others' comfort or remain loyal to the woman you're becoming? Another powerful shift involves dissolving external validation needs, especially from masculine authority. Jung wrote extensively about father complex, the internalized masculine approval or disapproval voice shaping female self-perception. When this complex weakens, something extraordinary transpires. Masculine opinions, individual or collective, lose emotional gravity they once commanded. This isn't bitterness, it's liberation. Without needing to impress, attract, or be selected, you discover your identity. When you cease performing for audiences, you learn living according to personal values rather than adaptations shaped by fear or approval seeking. Authority becomes internal instead of borrowed. As this authority stabilizes, surrounding reality begins responding differently. Opportunities materialize, relationships transform, synchronicities multiply. This isn't enchantment, it's coherence. When your internal world aligns, external world reorganizes itself, matching that alignment. Profound transformation also occurs within your sexual and creative energy, though not how society superficially frames it. This isn't about becoming more alluring or desirable for others. It's about reclaiming deeper erotic force that ancient traditions considered raw creativity and vitality engine. Jung understood that sexuality, creativity, intuition, and spiritual awareness aren't separate human experience categories, but different expressions of identical, underlying life force. When a woman steps from performance-based femininity into embodied authenticity, this energy returns in original form. It's no longer filtered through attraction, pleasing, or validation-seeking needs. It becomes something carried inwardly, quiet radiance rather than exhibition. This reclamation makes her magnetic in ways disconnected from effort. She becomes source rather than seeker. Her presence shifts. Her voice deepens in conviction, and space surrounding her feels charged. This explains why others feel drawn despite her not attempting appeal. Yet this magnetism isn't meant for external consumption. It exists because she's stopped abandoning herself. One paradox of this stage: as inner power strengthens, so does solitude. Not surface-level isolation of physical aloneness, but deeper solitude, recognizing no one can walk this path for you. Individuation, as Jung described, ultimately constitutes solitary journey. You can receive guidance, inspiration, reflection from others. Yet actual work of descending, integrating, emerging must be accomplished alone. This solitude contains no error, it's essential. Without it, you'd remain entangled in others' expectations and desires. During this phase, feeling misunderstood or invisible intensifies. People who relied on your emotional labor may retreat because you no longer provide unconsciously expected comfort. Others may desperately cling to versions serving them. Some may accuse you of excessive change, rapid growth, increasing distance. Yet their reactions reflect their fears, not your path indicators. When you evolve, you force others confronting their stagnation. Most resist that confrontation. This explains why pressure returning to old self intensifies precisely as breakthrough approaches. Life presents familiar temptations, old relationships, old habits, old environments once providing comfort. They may appear during vulnerable or uncertain moments. These aren't coincidences, but psychological examinations. The question, will you choose familiarity or authenticity? One offers temporary relief. The other offers transformation. How do you trust your direction when everything feels unfamiliar? Jung suggested examining energetic signatures of choices. Fear creates contraction. It makes you shrink, hesitate, seek safety in ancient patterns. Intuition, even when indicating difficulty, carries subtle expansion. Clarity, inevitability. It whispers rather than shouts. It guides rather than forces. The more you listen to this deeper voice, easier distinguishing it from anxiety becomes. This journey requires courage, not because the path endangers, but because it demands honesty. You must willingly face not only wounds but potential. Many women fear their power more than pain. Pain feels familiar, power remains unknown. Pain keeps you small, power asks you living without excuses. Pain allows remaining hidden, power demands visibility, even if visibility is internal. To embrace your power means accepting responsibility for who you become. That responsibility can terrify, yet simultaneously liberates. The transformation you're undergoing also forces reinterpreting your suffering. Jung's entire psychological framework rests on wounds being portals, not punishments. Descent into darkness isn't meant to break you, it's meant to reveal you. When examining suffering with depth rather than avoidance, you discover patterns, meaning, direction. You realize most difficult experiences shaped your discernment, sharpened intuition, carved inner space where wisdom now resides. Women emerging from this process carry depth that cannot be imitated. They move through existence with inner stillness born from what they've survived. Eventually, profound recognition emerges. The power you're stepping into isn't new, it's ancient. You're not becoming someone else. You're remembering who you were before fear, conditioning, expectation buried your essence. Individuation doesn't create the self, it uncovers it. The authentic woman emerging within you is identical to who existed before you learned betraying yourself for acceptance. She was never absent, only waiting. As you stabilize at this deeper selfhood level, surrounding reality begins shifting responsively. Opportunities align with uncanny timing. People resonating with your new frequency appear unexpectedly. Obstacles dissolve in seemingly orchestrated ways. Jung's synchronicity principle reflects this internal alignment. When your inner world becomes coherent, outer world mirrors that coherence. It's not magic, it's resonance. What once required force now unfolds with flow. Yet one more stage remains the temptation hiding your transformation. As identity solidifies, you may feel urged keeping evolution private, fearing judgment, misunderstanding, or backlash. Yet growth will inevitably affect others whether you speak about it or not. By existing as your authentic self, you challenge everyone surrounding you to confront their patterns. Some will feel inspired. Some will feel intimidated. Some will distance themselves. This is unavoidable and not your burden managing. True wholeness makes you sovereign. You no longer seek confirmation. You're guided by internal compass rather than external consensus. You can be alone without feeling lonely, connected without becoming entangled, loving without losing yourself. You navigate relationships, work, creativity, purpose from grounded truth. This is psychological adulthood Jung envisioned, not a role you play, but a state of being. As you walk this path, you contribute to something far greater than individual life. Every time a woman reclaims power, integrates shadow, chooses authenticity, she alters unconscious landscape for all women. She makes it easier for the next woman awakening, healing, becoming whole. Your transformation sends ripples through collective psyche, touching lives you'll never meet. If this resonates, it's because you're already engaged in this process. You're not imagining the shift. You're not losing yourself. You are finally returning to yourself. The woman emerging within you isn't an improved version of who you were. She is truth beneath every mask you've ever worn. As this unfolding deepens, a quiet but unmistakable truth takes shape. The power you're stepping into was never something requiring earning. It was never something others gave or withheld until you became worthy. It has always been yours. What you're experiencing isn't acquisition, but revelation. The essence at your core, the one existing long before you learned shape-shifting for acceptance, has simply risen back into awareness. This explains why so much of the process feels like remembering rather than discovering. You're not becoming someone new. You're returning to someone eternal. This remembering changes your entire life texture. You stop searching for validation because you finally understand it was never reliable guidance. You stop trying fitting yourself into spaces requiring truth diminishment. You stop negotiating worth with people incapable of seeing you clearly. The clarity emerging is simultaneously painful and liberating. Painful because you realize how often you abandoned yourself. Liberating because you realize you never have to repeat that betrayal. Jung called this alignment with the self, a psychological center deeper than ego, deeper than personality, deeper even than emotion. When you touch this ground within yourself, betraying it without feeling immediate dissonance becomes impossible. This internal stability doesn't make life easy, but it makes life coherent. You still face challenges, disappointments, moments of uncertainty, but you're no longer fractured. Storms don't shatter you. They reveal where your roots now reach. With this alignment comes responsibility many people never encounter because they never reach this consciousness level. Once you awaken to authentic nature, you can no longer participate in dynamics relying on your silence or compliance. You become incapable of shrinking yourself, keeping others comfortable. Your presence alone, your refusal pretending, your willingness speaking truthfully, your quiet integrity embodiment becomes catalyst. Without trying, you provoke transformation in others simply by existing as yourself. This explains why people react strongly to women in their power. Some admire them, some fear them, some project onto them, some retreat. Yet reaction always reflects the observer's relationship with their own unrealized self. You become living invitation, a reminder of possibility, and simultaneously mirror, revealing what others still avoid. Many will find this unsettling. Few will find it inspiring. None will find it neutral. This creates unique loneliness, rooted not in people's absence, but in true resonance's rarity. Once you've tasted authenticity, you can no longer tolerate relationships built on performance or pretense. You crave depth, presence, honesty, energetic clarity. These qualities aren't common, so space around you may temporarily feel sparse. Yet this emptiness isn't punishment, it's preparation. Life removes what cannot support expansion, so room exists for what can. In this quiet space, something else emerges, recognition that you belong to yourself first, that your life isn't an audition, that love isn't earned through self-betrayal, that connection doesn't require contortion. Your sense of belonging shifts from external validation to internal truth. This shift creates stability more profound than anything you've experienced. You become anchored from within. Then, almost mysteriously, life begins rearranging around you. People resonating with your new frequency arrive unexpectedly. Conversations deepen. Opportunities align with uncanny timing. Circumstances unfold in seemingly orchestrated ways. This is synchronicity in action, not magical thinking, but natural alignment of inner coherence with outer reality. When your inner world stops contradicting itself, external world stops reflecting contradiction back to you. At this stage, something else softens inside you. Urgency to prove, to perform, to justify choices dissolves. You realize authenticity doesn't require explanation. Your life becomes less about effort and more about expression. You act not from pressure but from clarity. You speak not to persuade but to articulate truth. You move through existence with subtle confidence, requiring no recognition to exist. Yet even here, one final temptation appears, the call returning to old patterns when life becomes challenging. Regression always easier than expansion. But once you've met your authentic self, returning to who you were is no longer viable. Discomfort of growth is now more bearable than suffocation of self-abandonment. You realize moving backward would require forgetting what can no longer be forgotten. So instead, you continue forward, not quickly, not perfectly, but faithfully. You trust the silence, you trust the pauses, you trust dissolution of what no longer serves you. You trust empty spaces feeling frightening because they're full of potential yet to take form. You trust the woman emerging within you even when you don't fully understand her. Especially then, as you walk, you begin understanding something profound. Your journey is not only transforming you, it's contributing to something larger. Jung believed individual transformation affects collective unconscious. Every shadow layer you integrate, every courage act you embody, every truth you claim sends subtle but powerful ripple through psychic field shared by all women. You become part of healing lineage, stretching backward and forward through time. You will never know the full extent your awakening's impact on others. You may never see women drawing strength from your existence. You may never hear stories of those finding courage because you found yours. Yet influence is real, moving through the world in invisible but undeniable ways. So if you are here, if these words resonate, understand this: you are not broken. You are not falling apart. You are not failing. You are shedding. You are dissolving what was never truly you. You're stepping into the most powerful phase of your existence. the phase where everything false dies so everything true can breathe. Trust the process. Trust the threshold. Trust the becoming. The woman you are meant to be is already within you. She has simply been waiting for you to remember. If this message resonated with your soul, please like this video and join our community at Wake and Win, where we explore the deeper truths of transformation and awakening together.